welcome to another episode of This Happy Guru with Kirsty Bentley Taylor. That's me. Tonight I'm going to be talking to a inspirational man, I'd like to say. He's Paul Webb. He's a one-time professional athlete. He's author of 2 best-selling books. He's now he has been a strength and performance mentor. He's now a spiritual coach. He's basically an overall badass, going out there, inspiring people to become the best that they can be. I'm really excited to talk to him because, to be honest with you, as a female coach in this business, I don't speak to a lot of men. Women tend to gravitate towards me. I tend to have a lot more women clients than men. Quite keen to see if he has that experience as well, whether his client base tends to be male. And I'm really interested to find out kind of a male perspective from the whole awakening of consciousness point of view. So first of all, let me introduce you. Hi, Paul.
Hello, Kirsty. Thanks very much for the wonderful introduction.
I hope I did you credit. I hope I did.
It was fabulous.
Thank you. Can you just start us off with giving us a kind of a where you began type thing? I know you started off as a professional athlete. So how did you get into that?
Well, when I was don't let my boyish good looks fool you, first of all, right? I'm actually quite old. So I was a 70s child. And when I grew up, obviously, we didn't have as many distractions as we tend to have today. So we played outside. We went out after school. We played till it got dark. We come home. And that was pretty much it. So I'm a London boy. We played football. Everyone wanted to be a footballer. I support Chelsea. I wanted to play for Chelsea. So every day that was the mentality, that I just wanted to play football, that I just wanted to be a sportsman. So that's all I did. And I was fortunate enough that as I went through school, I was good enough to get noticed by a few professional teams. Unfortunately, not Chelsea, but I ended up as a schoolboy professional Crystal Palace. And then I signed apprentice professional forms when I left school. So straight from school, I went into Crystal Palace as a footballer. There I spent 2 or 3 years playing with them. I also did a stint with Fulham. Unfortunately, ended up getting injured. And that was the end of that. So my whole life was directed towards that, being a footballer, being a sportsman. And when that came to an end abruptly, it was kind of quite a challenging time, to be fair.
Yeah, right. Because that's every boy's dream as well, isn't it? Especially back then.
It certainly was back then, yeah.
England still riding high on the crest of the World Cup, I should imagine. So everyone's still kind of fingers crossed.
Well, it was kind of, we didn't have much football on the telly back then either. Like saturated wall-to-wall coverage with all sports these days, not just football, but football in particular. Back then, you didn't see any live games. The only live game you saw every year was probably the FA Cup final. So that made that a huge thing. Yeah. And it made going to watch football live a really big thing as well. You had Match of the Day, you had the big match, so kind of highlight programs. But you never actually saw much football on the TV. So to actually be involved in it, to actually be around that environment was just a dream come true at the time.
Yeah, I can imagine. And quite exclusive really then as well. Because like you say, everything's saturated by football now, isn't it? It's like don't seem to be able to turn on the television without finding it, whether it's a footballer marketing something or, it's gone crazy.
Well, it's front and back page news these days. It's footballers are celebrities. They're for rightly or wrongly, they're in the media all the time. You've only got to look at what's happening to one of their footballers now at the moment with this tattoo thing. So it's big news. It wasn't quite so big back then from a media perspective, but you were still one of a very small percentage of people that first of all actually was an athlete. Secondly, was a professional footballer. It was the 1% of 1% kind of club. Quite unique and a quite enjoyable time to look back at.
Excellent. So then from there, you had an injury and that stopped you from playing football, but did you carry on with sports?
Well, yeah, I kind of did. I had a really bad hand injury. So I was a goalkeeper. And of course, as a goalkeeper, your hands are quite important, right?
Yeah.
So I shattered my thumb joint, saving a penalty. So I spent about a year or 2 trying to come back from that. And I couldn't play every day. I could play, but I couldn't play every day. And obviously as a professional, you train every day. So that really was the end of that at that level. Looking back, I could have carried on. I could have played at a lower level, but you know, I was a bit of a football snob. I'd played at this level. I'd been around this level. Excuse me. I'd been paid to play at this level. You know, the last thing I wanted to do was, you know, it was to drop down levels. Really, I just didn't have the enthusiasm or the wherewithal to do that.
Yeah.
So, so you know, back in those days, I had a bit of a hero. My cousin was British powerlifting champion. So I had someone who was a bit of a superhero, big guy, huge guy, tattoos, big beard, rode a Harley Davidson, badass guy. He did weights. He was a strong guy. And he got me into that kind of training back when I was young, 12, 13, that sort of age. So I was always quite strong. Yeah. So that kind of interested me a lot. So I did a lot of training around about that time. And I kind of got this interest, this sort of germination of an idea that was something I wanted to expand upon, you know, that I wanted to somehow be involved still in the sporting world at however it would look. It didn't really matter at the time, but I didn't want to do a real job. I didn't want to sit in an office. I didn't want to, you know, be told what to do, when to turn up, what to wear, and all this sort of thing. You know, it wasn't that I was being arrogant about anything. It was just that I wanted to be a bit freer. I had this desire to be a bit more, follow my own path, follow my own story, so to speak.
Yeah, brilliant. And that was at a young age.
Yeah, and that was really at a young age. Yeah, you know, I used to have these conversations with all sorts of people who just look at me and think, you're so weird. You know? And it was just like, I was just questioning everything. I had this huge, voracious appetite for information from a very young age. Yeah, I read a lot. I wrote a lot. I asked questions all the time. I kept asking that famous question, why? Why does that happen? Why is that? What would happen if that would happen? It used to drive my parents insane. It still does, to be honest with you.
Yeah. But for you, it was all about learning, understanding, absorbing, and then kind of going out there with that new information to kind of target the world and find out where it was that you were going.
Yeah, and I kind of almost had, well, back then especially, almost like a scientist's brain. Yeah, I wanted to know how everything worked. I wasn't happy just about reading something and saying, oh, this does this. It was like, well, why? Why does that do that? And what happens if you change that? And what happens if these don't come together? And you know, that was kind of where I kind of got that kind of thirst for knowledge from. And don't forget, as I said, I was a 70s child. So we didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
If you wanted to know something and no one you knew it, you were on your bike down to the library.
That's right. Yeah. I was that kid as well. I mean, maybe after you, but still born in the 70s, certainly in the 80s, we still had to go down to the library and it was all about sourcing information and finding it out for yourself. It wasn't as quick and easy as quick type in something. Like you say, it was really going around asking people, asking if they knew anything. You know, you had to kind of be forward with your questioning as well, didn't you?
Yeah. And, you know, I've got 4 children. They're from various ages, at 20 down to 10. And you talk to them about having to get on your bike or walk into the library to thumb through a book, to find something out, to write it down or bring the book out. And they look at you like you're from another planet. And what you really are, right? You really are.
Well, nowadays, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I had to explain to my children what an encyclopedia was the other day. And they were like, what, Wikipedia? And I was just like, well, no, not really.
yeah, just like that. Yeah. A hardcover, just like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, brilliant. So you started coaching from then? How did you get into coaching?
Well, I kind of, what I remember at the time, my dad had a house with a double garage and he didn't have any cars in there because we had to put the car on a drive or his cab. So he allowed me to have basic gym equipment in the house. So I would buy equipment, put it in the garage rather, and I had like a rudimentary garage gym, right? Yeah. And this is like back in about 88, 89. And I can remember my friends and I went on holiday to Tenerife, and I can remember them coming around to the house as a group, about 5 of us, and writing training programs for them and training them in this garage and getting them in shape to go away to Tenerife, I think it was, back in 1989.
With all their personal goals in mind. You know, I want bigger biceps, I want a broad chest.
They want a beach body, right? So that was basically that. So what I'd learned from my cousin, what I picked up from books and the library, and you know, a little bit on physiology, a little bit on training and that sort of thing, really basic stuff. But, you know, we worked hard, we trained hard. and we got relatively in shape to go away to Tenerife for. And that kind of gave me that inspiration to do more of that, but it wasn't quite as easy as that because there were no qualifications for it back then.
Yeah, I was going to say, was PT, was personal training around?
No, not really. Not really. Not in the UK anyway. So in the States, they had strength coaches. They had gyms where people coached from, but just didn't have any of that in the UK. I mean, they didn't even have, as far as I know, like David Lloyd hadn't even opened gyms back then. Yeah. There were no big chain of gyms. There were underground kind of like hidden away bodybuilding type gyms. There were certainly powerlifting type gyms.
Yeah, and boxing.
Yeah. But there was nothing really like it is today. You didn't even have strength and conditioning or sports science degrees to take at universities or at school. I mean, in fact, I think that the only thing you could take was PE, and that was a CSE back then. We had O-levels and CSEs. So it wasn't even an O-level PE. So it was very much, we were inventing it as we went along, effectively.
Yeah. Brilliant. So how was that for you then? Like, does that give you kind of free rein? Because as much as there's nothing there to kind of guide you, sometimes that can be a bonus, can't it? Because it allows you to really create. It allows you to sort of draw from your own experiences and what it is that you want to show people. Just trying to get an idea, because I know your coaching style is really kind of based on like your own experience or, that sort of thing, and all the experiences of all your clients. But I'm just wondering whether that kind of drawing of information and then kind of throwing it back out again started at a really early age with the personal training.
Well, there's no expectations. There's no, people would come to me for training sessions, for instance, and they had no preconceived idea of what was going to happen.
Right.
These days, you've only got to look at Instagram or you've got to look at YouTube or Facebook, and people they have an expectation of what a training session is going to be like.
Yeah, sure.
Back then, they didn't know, right? Yeah. So we were kind of making it up as we went along. I'm not going to lie to you. I think at the time I was charging like $5 a session. It was just done as a hobby more than anything. It wasn't even a proper business. It didn't become a proper business till much later. But we were kind of just winging it. If someone comes to me and wanted to get fitter, I took them out onto the field and did field drills with them and got them fitter. If they wanted to get stronger, I remembered what, my cousin had showed me with powerlifting, and they were strong guys. So we got them strong. Getting them under a barbell was very, very basic stuff. If they wanted to lose weight, you just told them to eat less food. It was as ridiculous as it sounds. That was pretty much it. And remember, we're talking about 89, 90, 91. I didn't go to America and start doing strength and conditioning stuff till a bit later, and then it was a real eye-opener because there was structure to it. But even after doing that and coming back to the UK in the mid-90s, people still didn't have an expectation. Gyms were just starting to open, but people were jumping on treadmills and going swimming and playing tennis. The weights sections were just curiosities in the corner. Yeah. They didn't expand till much, much later, till sort of like, the turn of the century, really, before they started to become more popular.
Yeah. Okay, so what really led you then, because you went to America in the end, didn't you? And you started, you did training over there, or? Strength and conditioning. Okay.
So my interest was strength and performance.
Yeah.
Right? So because I come from the athlete background, I wanted to work exclusively with athletes. What I didn't realize back then was that the majority of athletes, especially in the UK, didn't know what a strength and conditioning coach was. They thought they equated going to the gym with bodybuilding and being slow and cumbersome and all that sort of thing. They didn't realize that with a proper strength and conditioning kind of program, they could get explosive, they could get powerful, they could get more resistant to injury, they could get better condition, fitter, and all this kind of thing, better mentality. It was kind of a hard sell, right? Yeah. So I kind of had to almost reinvent myself on the spot and start doing more what we now class as personal training sessions, which was just getting people in shape, which was just making people fitter, which was just making people leaner, which was just making people slightly stronger. And the way I had to do it was I had to do it myself. I had to, with the help of my then wife, we set up studios, which effectively were personal training studios, it just wasn't around at the time. There just wasn't many of them around. And it was kind of like, almost an educating clients into that. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. But to be honest with you, even looking back now, we weren't writing fat loss programs per se because people didn't really need them.
Yeah.
That came later, and then it became mostly fat loss. It became mostly shifting weight and building a little bit of muscle.
Yeah. So was that when you began to see about the mindset change? Because obviously with weight loss and stuff, you tend to get into emotions and stuff. I mean, at the minute you kind of look at, well, in my experience, when I've coached people through weight loss and stuff like that, there's a lot of emotion attached to it. There's a lot of kind of self-doubt and, almost unrest with the people that they are, the way they look fundamentally, and it tends to come out in having eaten too much or having binge habits and stuff like that. And then when you ask them to kind of lose weight, it's actually the emotional stuff that we tend to go back over, or I tend to go back over with them, to try and clear that first so that they've got almost a clear path to be able to then focus their sights on what it is that they want. Is that something you noticed?
Yeah. I'm going to be honest with you. I kind of come across it by accident.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not big into celebrity, right?
Yeah.
I've been a footballer. I had a mediocre of fame back in the 80s, but I'm not the sort of coach that wants to be front and center. It's about the client. It's about the athlete. It's about the person. It's not about me, right? I'm employed to give service, but fine. I'm really happy with that. But I kind of got a little bit of a reputation as the kind of coach to go to if you couldn't get a result. Right. So people have tried exercise, people have tried dieting, people have tried gyms, people have tried all sorts of things and couldn't lose weight, for instance. Yeah. They would come to me and I would start getting them a result.
Brilliant.
Right? And the reason was, it wasn't that I was changing their training too much. They were still doing similar sort of work.
Yeah.
It wasn't that we were changing their diets drastically. They were still, eating reasonably well and that sort of thing because they were trying to lose weight. So they were taking care of business in most. Yeah. What I did, I think that really I sort of thought, oh, hold on a minute, was that I changed the way these people thought about themselves.
Yeah.
Right? Because it wasn't about people coming in and me just churning through personal training sessions and getting them out the door. Yeah. My whole ethos about building a business, especially a gym back then, was to have a community. I wanted to have a place where people wanted to come. I wanted to have a place where it was slightly more selective. People wanted to be in there. We had high-end equipment. We charged a bit more money than the average gym. We had coaches taking care of everything. We did personal programs, everything. And we wanted them to feel that they wanted to be in this place. And we wanted them to feel that they could build relationships with everyone in this place, the staff, the coaches, the other clients, etc., etc. Yeah. So it was about sitting down with them and actually listening to them, listening to their fears, listening to their worries, listening to their lifestyles, and just kind of think, okay, well, what can we do here? Because this is really important, because you're only in the gym for 3 hours a week. Yeah. You only eat 2 or 3 times a day or 4 times a day or whatever. You take your body around and you take your mind around and you take everything around, your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, your words, your narrative, that goes with you 24/7. So we need to start looking at that. And it was just a case of, okay, let's have a look at this and see if this works. Just try it. I'm like a scientist. I'll just try things. If it works, we'll use it. If it doesn't, out it goes.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. So you sort of kind of started naturally coaching people through as you were training them.
Yeah, so it started off with, what we did is we would, when people came in to inquire about the gym, they would have to make an appointment to come round. Yeah. So we would sit down, we had a nice leather sofa in the reception, we would sit down and we would just talk to them about the ethos of the gym. So, and it wasn't so much a talk about, we've got this equipment, we've got that equipment, we're this good at doing that. It was like, tell me what's going on in your life.
Yeah.
So we'd start from completely the other way. I want to know what's going on in your life right now. I want to know what you're doing, because I was very, very well versed in stress, the physiology of fat loss and how stress impacts that. So I wanted to see where they were stressed in their life, because my thought was, if I can lower their stress level, I can train them harder.
Yeah.
And we can get quicker results.
Yeah.
And that was the whole, it was, I will keep these clients, long term. And I did, we had a long retention rate for clients.
Yeah.
Which is quite unusual in the fitness
Well,
industry.
absolutely, and it's a key to a successful business as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That repeat
Yeah.
business, yeah, and of course word of mouth, because not just that, when people are going out of an evening and they're like, oh my God, you look fantastic, I can imagine everybody was dropping your name, saying this guy's amazing, this is wonderful, it's groundbreaking.
However, I have to give you a little side. It was all that, but it also created a little bit of a monster, because what it did is everyone wanted to see me.
Right.
So I had a gym of coaches. I had a business that was open a lot of hours, and everyone wanted to come in there and wanted to see me.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the ability or the skill back then to say no.
Right.
So it caused a few issues.
Yeah.
You know, that I want to point out that whilst it seems like you've hit upon this wonderful thing and it's going to be amazing, that because it was my thing and because I didn't quite coach the coaches well enough in this, because it was all something I was doing on the fly. You know, I wasn't writing this down. I wasn't. It was just coming to me, and I was just talking, and in this talking, I was making these clients aware, and they were building relationships with me, etc., etc. So the workload I had ended up being phenomenal, far too much than I could cope with in the end.
Yeah. So it took its toll on you.
Very much so.
The business, I expect. The
business, my health, and unfortunately, my marriage in the end. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, shame. Sorry about that. That's okay. Fine. You went from there into, I know you're writing, you wrote a couple of books as well about strength and performance training.
Yeah, so I did that for footballers. I did strength and conditioning for goalkeepers and strength and conditioning for footballers, and they were published, and they've gone on to, that was about 4 or 5 years ago now, and they still sell quite well. I still get the odd royalty check drop in. And, it's been quite, I've enjoyed having them out there, really.
Yeah, sure. Great accolade. So at what point did you really begin to start looking at yourself? At what stage? Because I'm trying to kind of think of getting an idea of you as a person, and kind of seeing you in my mind in this kind of 80s ego, high end, nice, cruising life, life's looking good. Then it gets really hardcore. Things start to drop away at the seams, and you're thinking to yourself, is this really success? Am I kind of following the idea a little bit?
I've always been a questioner. I've always been someone that asks questions and tries to, upset the status quo a little bit. I kind of like being a bit of a disruptor.
Yeah.
And I don't do it for any reason other than I just want to, it's a desire for information, for knowledge.
Understand.
And questioning people who, when people come up and say, look, this is the way this works. Are you going to say, okay, fine, I believe you and I'll go with that? Or are you going to say, okay, prove it to me, show me?
Yeah.
Tell me how it works, why it works, why you're so confident that's true. So I've always been that kind of argumentative, my family would say, kind of person. Right? So I've always wanted to develop. I've always wanted to grow.
Yeah.
Right? From the training, I wanted to be the best at that. From my writing, I want to be the best I can be at that. It's not about competing with other people. I don't want you to think I sit here and say, okay, I'm going to be better than that person. I'm going to be better than that. That's not the case. The case is, okay, this is where I am today. Tomorrow, I want to be 1% better. I just want to improve that little bit. And that has driven me from a really small boy, right up to today, and still drives me today.
Yeah.
To be the best I can be, because when I do that, then I can sit in front of clients and I can say, look, I'm no different to you. I'm really not. I'm from a council estate in South London. Right? I left school at 16, went into football, lost that, built businesses, lost some of them, was successful at some of them, got married, got divorced. I'm no different.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a desire to improve. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Right? And so that has taken me, okay, what do I need to improve? Well, I need to improve more on this. I allowed the business to run and didn't take care of what I needed to take care of. So I need to improve that side of me. So I need to look at how I set myself up for work, how I set myself up for relationships, and so on and so forth. And by doing that, then I can help other people in a similar situation.
Absolutely. Taking accountability for yourself the whole time.
Yeah, definitely.
Driving yourself forward the whole time.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So at what stage did you begin to kind of look at like I suppose, a more internal view of yourself, you know, what it was exactly that you've got this amazing drive, this passion to do better for yourself all the time. At what stage did it kind of drop into being actually, it's not just about the accolation of things, you know, like it's not just about the winning or the proving myself or anything like that. It's kind of become more about the person that I am. Do you know what I mean? Like the kind of, rather than what I give out, also about what I take in.
I think it was an accumulation of things that did that. I don't think it was one thing in particular. I can say it was this point in my time I kind of had a realization. It was kind of an accumulation of stuff. And what I noticed was that I kind of would wrap myself up in what I was doing, right? So what I mean by that is I was a footballer.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a footballer. I'm a gym owner. I'm a strength coach. I'm a personal trainer. I'm an author. Right? I would identify myself with a particular thing. Right? And that's great right up until the point you lose that thing.
That's right, right.
Because when you say you're a footballer, I play for Crystal Palace, I'm a goalkeeper, and then it's gone.
Then
what people say, oh, it's that goalkeeper. You say, you know, and you feel terrible. You feel really bad. So it was an accumulation of realizing, you know, as Joseph Campbell would say, you wear masks, you give yourself identities, right? And you discover that that's not really you. And when you strip it all back, you're nothing like that. You're really not. And that hurts, and that is painful. And it takes time to come to terms with that. And this is why I think that we have a real problem in society when we identify with certain things. We give ourselves roles, and these roles are driven by our ego. They're labels. And when we lose our label, we wrap up all our power in it. And when we lose it, we lose that power, and then we've got nothing.
Right.
And there's just, what is there? There's emptiness. There's nothing there. And that's where a lot of clients come to me these days. They come to me because they have spent sometimes their entire adult life as this thing, this CEO, this leader, this manager, this athlete, this whatever, this actor. They lose that particular thing and they're not it anymore. And all of a sudden they think they're nothing.
Yeah. So they're struggling to find again who they actually are without the outer shell. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's because we live from the outside in.
Yeah.
It's because we are driven through our ego to have something that we can say to somebody, I'm important because X, Y, Z.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've developed culture around it, haven't we? I mean, it's kind of like, who are you? You know, so what do you do? It's one of the first things people always ask, isn't it? Like, what do you do?
What do you do? Yeah. And it's like when you only have to go to a networking event and have someone come up and give you a card. You know, not only are they willing to tell you what they do, they're willing to give you a bit of paper they've had printed showing you what they do. Or what they are, or
like it's proof.
Like you'll say, okay, so that's you, is it?
Yeah.
So I had this realization ongoing. Certainly when things, you know, I attached, let's call it, to something, and then that thing didn't work or it went a different direction. And I found that that wasn't me. You know, selling the business, letting the gym go was a huge moment for me because I become so immersed in everything, in every aspect of it, that it was me, right? And letting it go, I can remember laying on it because I just had a knee operation at the time as well. So I'm in a brace. I can't load bear for 4 weeks. I've sold the business. My wife's gone back to work. The kids are at school and I'm just laying there on the sofa. And I'm thinking, what on earth is going on here?
Yeah. Like your worst nightmare, sounds like.
What am I going to do? Who am I? What have I got?
Yeah.
You know,
what can I now become? Like, who am I now going to be?
Who now is going to want a broken, injured personal trainer, strength coach, call it what you want? How can I go to someone and say, hey, I'm Paul Webb, you may know me as a strength coach, but now I'm a mindset coach or an accountability coach or a life coach or whatever. You know, these were the things that were kind of going through my head at the time. You know, and it's because I identified and gave myself an identity through an external role.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting for me, Paul, because I'm a yoga teacher, and I spend a lot of time in my body, you know, like, again, relying on my body, working with my body. And so I can relate completely. I know the times when I get little pangs in my body and I feel to myself like, I know intuitively that maybe I need to rest, but I've got like 3 classes that day. So I have to kind of keep going on. And again, I like to think of it's a balance between that whole, well, I'm actually committed to helping these people and to teaching and to doing all that sort of stuff. And also it's that ego of being a yoga teacher, like, are you really a yoga teacher if you're not able to practice because you've got a dodgy knee at that time, like, and how does that all fit and how does that all balance? And it's interesting to hear, like, from a professional athlete's point of view as well, because apart from professional yoga teachers in India, it's not that really that kind of, it's not really even a sport. It's not that sort of thing. So it's interesting because one of the principles of yoga also is detachment. And it's about kind of letting go of the ego and letting go of that idea that you are something because of the things that you've kind of achieved in your life. And really from kind of leading directly from the heart. And that's certainly something that I do with my clients a lot, is to actually just, a lot of the times, just get them to focus in on themselves and almost, literally touch base with their heart and say, okay, who is it that you are? Let's take it back. Let's take it kind of right back to when you were a child. What were those things that you gravitated towards? The questioning that you had as a child about why does that happen? That constant questioning, that's the sort of stuff that I try and kind of unearth my clients to get them to recognize the personality that's been born into this body. And then watch how you've kind of driven that through all the influences and the experiences and the amazing people that you've met and the, and the really terrible things that might have happened to you. How has that then driven that personality into what you see before you now? And also how you process the idea of who you are. So it's really interesting that actually it was kind of detachment and almost forced detachment in your example.
Definitely. And I think we have, as a society, we have a real problem with detachment. I think we like to attach to everything.
Yeah.
You only got to look at people with their mobile devices, right? Their phones, right?
Yeah. So
we live in an age of a huge deliberate distraction, right? Where we can just pick up our phone and just lose ourselves. I went to the cinema just recently to watch Solo. Came out the cinema, and as I walked out, everyone went bang with their phone straight away. They didn't even get out of the cinema, the theatre, before they were looking at their phones. We have lost the ability to disassociate, to detach, and to just be comfortable in silence, to be comfortable in ourselves, in our space, and just sit and be. And people just cannot do that at the moment. And I try and encourage as many people as I can through whatever medium I can to just take some time every single day to just be with themselves, to just not turn on the phone, to just not speak, to just sit and be quiet and still, because that silence is important. It's healing, right? It's where you unravel and decompress.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people just don't do it. They want noise, they want action, they want distraction, they want stimulation. They're addicted to stimulation. They can't be on their own. They can't listen to that narrative that goes around in their mind.
Yeah.
They don't want to deal with it. They certainly don't want to listen to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I actually think, like, I was living in Thailand for 8 years, and what struck me immediately upon coming home and actually living here was what an epidemic it's become. I saw it a little bit, like it came filtering in, when I'd go to the beach and the kind of, various tourists were kind of holding up their iPhones or their iPads and looking at everything that for me was almost the most beautiful thing in the world.
Oh, I know.
Through a lens, not camera lens, but just through a screen. Yeah. So like watching it on TV.
Well, you've only got to go to a concert or a sporting event and watch how many people record it or take pictures through their phone or through their iPad or whatever. They're not actually immersing themselves in the experience. They're not experiencing what's going on.
Yeah.
They're kind of doing it as a third party. They're disassociating themselves from the event. Why would you do that?
No, why not just watch it on TV and and record it? It's crazy. And I think that your point about detachment is absolutely spot on as well, because the point being that everything compounds it now. So everything that you can get is through your phone. So it's almost like you're being conditioned to be attached to one device, because when it goes, I mean, and I'm guilty of this as the next person, when my phone breaks, I'm like, oh God, oh, this is inconvenient. You know, it's not just my phone. It's not just the way that I can access anyone should I need them and they can access me, but it's also the way that I can connect socially. It's the way that I conduct a lot of my work.
Yeah.
It's, you know, a kind of security blanket for me with my children so that they can contact me, whatever. And, you know, it's become, I think we've been manipulated into this way of being very attached to really something that is essentially just a material object. And of course, then that transfers into everything else as well, because then you become more attached to other things that kind of bring you that, like, you know, you're more attached to your computer. People are carrying around laptops and phones and MP3 players and all those sorts of things. And they, you know, most people have at least 2 technological devices in their homes. One will be their phone for sure.
Yeah.
This isn't just the Western world. This is the Eastern world as well. This is going on, you know, all over the place. Even when I went to India, the majority of people are walking around with smartphones. They might not be Apple or they might not be, but they're still diligently tapping away on their Facebook or posting something on Instagram. Or, I mean, it's changed the way we communicate, not just with one another, because I think we've detached from one another, ironically, but also the way that we communicate within ourselves. Like you, I agree that we should have downtime. There should be time where you just sit and you are. And I fight with this with my kids, because the minute they say, you know, you can see them, they sit down, they look out the window, in their minds they're going, I'm bored. And it's been like 3 seconds, you know, and they're just looking around for something that will stimulate them. And they're just, you know, we've got generation after generation growing up looking for stimuli everywhere they go. Yeah. And I think this is one of the cause of the increases in anxiety in our young children, you know, because they just can't downtime ever. And they're all watching their screens until the minute they go to bed, the minute they open eyes, they're back on their screens. You know,
and I think you're absolutely right with epidemic of anxiety and stress and depression and that sort of thing, because there's no doubt that looking at a device alters your brain waves and your brain function. Yeah. And if you've got kids at a young age doing it, and you see these kids in restaurants, so the parents will go, and I'm not judging anyone. I know it's difficult with kids sometimes, and I know there are certain kids that are quite tough and challenging. I was one of them, right? But you know, I see people go to restaurants, sit the kid in the chair, iPad goes out, bang, Lion King goes on.
Yeah.
You know, they're out for a meal. They're out as a family.
Yeah.
Right? And what they're doing is they're teaching their kids that it's okay to sit there and be separate.
Yeah.
So they're already driving a separate agenda, an addiction agenda, an attachment agenda on their kids at a very, very young age. And the problem is that the kids will watch these things all the way up till they go to bed. Their sleep will be interrupted. They won't sleep or rest properly. They get up in the morning, they're straight back on them again. It really, really is an issue. And I spoke very briefly of Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell was a famous mythologist in the 50s and 60s who was famous for coming up with this hero's journey concept, that, you know, that all stories are effectively one story. He called it the monomyth. And he spoke about, as I said earlier, about people wearing masks. Now, where can you so easily these days wear a mask? You can wear a mask online. Because you clearly don't have to be yourself. Yeah. You clearly can be whoever you want. You clearly can say what you want without censure, whether you believe it or not. Right? And it's a real problem, because people are starting to take on this persona that just isn't them. And then they have a really detached view of what life actually is, what they can and can't achieve, and the way to behave, and the way to actually just be a human. Yeah. It's becoming more and more difficult for these people. And it's a real issue, as you allude to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because also it pushes away the idea of what success actually is. You know, you begin to change your idea of what success is. Once upon a time, not even that long ago, you know, success was having a happy family, being able to pay the bills and paying towards having a permanent roof over your head that you'd one day your kids, and that would be, you know, job done. And now there's so many more things that you're required to do by kind of...
Well, I often think that for kids these days, the route to be happy is to have 1 million followers on Instagram on 15 minutes on the TV. Yeah. You know, I kind of think that that's kind of where it's going.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that's what they're seeing, though, with all the reality TV, you know, with all the kind of 5-second famous people. You know, they've only got, like you say, turn up on TV for 5 minutes and that's it. They're on the next episode of Loose Women or, you know, Good Morning Britain or whatever it is, you know, and then they're on there and then that's it. They're compounded to be kind of B-level social figures and then chucked you know, in a jungle every now and again, just to kind of regurgitate that wheel and get a little bit.
Put on a quiz show and on 1:30 in the afternoon or whatever.
Yeah. But it does give the average person, I think, an unrealistic idea of what is, you know, what life is actually all about. You know, like, I mean, I agree, like that you're asking children to kind of be constantly stimulated. So you're not really engaging the creative part of their brain either. You know, they're just absorbing. They're not really creating. And certainly our kids, without the conditioning that we as adults have all grown up and through, without the experiences that we've all grown up and through, you know, they have these amazing brains. You know, you've got 4 kids, you know, like just to watch them creating. Like my girls have spent the whole weekend building snail farms, and now they're on slug hotels, and, you know, and that's kind of because I'm just like, no, TV off, get outside, you know, enjoy your world. And again, I think having been brought up in the jungle, they gravitate towards nature for downtime, for creativity, for being able to connect in with what I always kind of promote as well as being, you know, this you're part of this oneness, you know, this is your world, this is your place to be. You have as much right to be here as that slug, so don't you go hurting that slug, you know, it's all the things. And those messages are getting sort of clipped away. You know, so we are seeing more and more people kind of, you know, hunting some of the most beautiful beasts on our planet. You know, we are seeing people absentmindedly just killing, you know, wasps, spiders, anything, just because they're there, just because they happen to be in the house, not for any genuine reason. I mean, one thing, if you're scared of things like that, I can understand that. But, you know, the number of people that I see when it's just kind of, you know, they just kill a fly because it's a fly and it's inside the house, rather than just open the window and just waft it out. You know, desperately trying to get out of there, like give it a hand, you know. And it's things like that, isn't it? It's getting those kids then to come out off the screen, to get off the stimuli and begin to go out there and find stimulation for themselves, and experience through that, you know.
Absolutely.
Which is key. And I certainly, again, with some of the things, and I don't know whether you see this as well, but some of the things that my clients are touching base with, it's a lot of anxiety-based stuff. It's also a lot of not really knowing their place in the world, you know, in the wider world.
You asked earlier about what my client split is, and it's really interesting because when I exclusively was a strength coach, personal trainer, it was probably 65-35 women to men. So I trained a lot more women than guys. But as I've gone on to more different types of coaching these days, that's kind of shifted a little bit, and it's probably at the moment running sort of 75% men, 25% women. And what's kind of showing up a lot for these guys is exactly that. Is they get to a stage of their life, right, where they're questioning. You know, for instance, I've built this really good business. I'm quite wealthy, but I've lost my family. My health has got to bit. What's happening? Where am I? Has it been worth it? It's just an example. I could give you many, many more, but fundamentally, people feel a little bit lost. People are struggling. You know, people want more, but they think they want more. But in actual fact, what they actually need to do is strip back and move backwards and come more inside, because that's where you discover truth. That's where you discover perspective, and that's where you discover awareness. You know, and when you get those things, when you get truth, when you get awareness, when you get space, you know, you become calm, you know, and that calmness is where you create. And that's what we need to do more of, I would suggest.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of interesting. So one of the things that I was kind of excited about getting you on here for, Paul, as well, was really talking about the divine masculine, because I had a couple of sessions, episodes that we've done before, where I've been talking about being authentic, you know, really being your authentic self. I've spoken about how important it is to imagine, and where creativity comes from, to imagine that sort of thing. And I see the guys in my life, the men especially, and I'm really beginning to feel sorry for them, because whereas I used to kind of feel sorry for the woman, you know, I think women are beginning to kind of feel more empowered. The most empowered I feel women have been in my lifetime, certainly. And alongside that, there's definitely, it feels for me, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is just my perception, and I'm interested to hear from your experience, is that guys are now feeling like the floor is moving a little bit under them, you know, and that actually the thing that they thought was going to please and that was going to be a success and that was going to be everything everybody expected of them. You know, that kind of that idea that men should be bringing the food to the table, that they're the kind of the hunter gatherers, that they are, you know, the women are going to stay at home and have the babies and they're going to be happy with that. And the men are going to be bringing it all home and they're going to have the big careers and they're going to be happy with that. And the women are going to be happy with that as well. And as that dynamic shifts, I kind of feel like a lot of the men in my sort of sphere anyway are feeling a little bit like, okay, so where do I land now on this? Do you know what I mean? Like, where am I kind of, what is expected of me now?
Yeah.
You know, the expectations were so definite at one stage and now all the lines are getting blurry. And I just kind of wonder from your perspective, whether you think that's like, you know, that's a true thing to say, whether my perception is accurate in your experience, whether you're feeling that as a man as well, you know, whether you can see where I'm coming from, whether, you're thinking, actually, I have changed my assessment of what is successful. It sounds like you have. But, you know, where it then leaves you, you know, where you can then go from there.
I think it's a couple of things that crop up. I think on the whole, you're correct. It's very perceptive. I think that there's a lot of talk at the moment about gender in all its forms.
Yeah.
Especially things like gender reassignment and stuff like that, which is something that I just don't know enough about to go into. But certainly identity is a huge issue at the moment. And I think that there's a case to say that, you know, at one point, you're absolutely right. There were clearly defined male and female roles, right? Right or wrong, this is what they were. The man went to work, the man earned the money, the man brought the bread home, the woman kept the house, all that. Now, you know, that's obviously actually quite demeaning to women because women are more than capable of going out and working and doing wonderful jobs in all sorts of industries. And there are some absolutely stunning examples of women whose role was absolutely crucial in certain things. I'll give you an example, the moon landings. Without the women scientists that were doing all the mathematics for all the calculations for those moon landings, we wouldn't have got to the moon. Right. So, you know, there then becomes this, on one stage there was this clearly defined line of who was doing what and what their role was. And then all of a sudden it changes and no one quite knows what's going on, you know, and people start to struggle and people start to have problems and people start to have issues. I personally don't think there are many clear, aligned, grounded, powerful men role models in society these days. I'm not saying there's not any, right? But I'm saying there's not enough. So these kids, young boys, go to school, are getting their lessons in being men from Instagram, from rap videos, from movies. Okay? So you look at that situation, you then look, so what that does is boys then decide that they're going to become badass, right? Boys decide that they're not going to pay attention at school, that they're going to be tough guys, that they're going to treat women in a certain way, that they're going to talk back and have an attitude. So girls start outperforming boys across the board in schools. The majority of pupils that are suspended or expelled from schools are boys. The majority of boys that end up in detention centres across the board, you know, is about 95%.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ludicrous. The pressure on boys, and pressure on girls as well, but we're talking about boys, is really, really tough. And there's no one there saying that, you know, that's not the way you behave. That's not the way that you do things. And it's no wonder these boys grow up and they lose direction. They lose focus. They lose who they are, their identity. It's a real issue. You know, was it something like 3 out of 4 suicides are guys?
Yeah.
You know, the majority
and that figure's creeping up and up every year. It's awful. Yeah.
And I think that you're absolutely right to flag it up because there's a huge, huge problem. And, you know, I don't deal with many straight mental issues with guys, but certainly every guy I seem to coach has these fears. There is something going on in their life which isn't aligned with who they really are. They don't even know in many cases who they really are. They're searching, they're fearful, they're downright scared. You know, they're confused. They're looking for justification in some circumstances. Just prove to me I'm a man. And I think in a lot of ways, this is why there's been a rise of these kind of training programs that have warrior in the title, where we're going to take a group of men, we're going to throw boxing gloves on them, we're going to get them to beat each other up, we're going to train them really hard, we're going to shout and scream at them, we're going to tell them to man up, we're going to tell them to grow a pair, and then we're going to send them on their way.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I get what you're doing, but it still isn't, going to solve the problems, the initial problems of why these guys' lack of identity.
Yeah.
And so I think that it is an issue, and I think it's only getting worse.
Yeah.
And I think until we have these guys that actually have an understanding of what's really going on and who they really are on all areas of their life. So I look at kind of 5 areas really. We're talking about your physical, your mental, your emotional. I mean, how many men can sit there and say they're broken? How many men can admit when they're in pain? This isn't working for me. I feel terrible. Can you help? How many men can actually do that these days?
Yeah.
Well, in my experience, not many.
Yeah.
Not many at all, right? So we have the physical, we have the mental, we have the emotional. We have this relationship side of us. How many people are really building sustainable, long-term, loving, aligned, grounded relationships with men and women?
Mm.
How difficult are people finding it to build relationships? I have clients that cannot build relationships with anyone, that have this need to prove everyone as an enemy.
Mm.
I mean, where does that come from?
Yeah.
Right? And then finally, this spiritual self, this understanding that you're not just this physical thing.
Yeah.
That there is more to it than that. There is this huge world of intention that you're attached to.
Yeah.
And if you just learn your place in it and how it works and how you can get in and out of it, then your life is undescribably better.
Yeah. Yeah. And so many more opportunities open up to you because you're so much more open to everything.
Yeah.
With yoga, we talk about a lot about, because we, the yogi philosophy is very much that you are half masculine energy and half feminine energy, and each one of us, it doesn't depend on your gender has nothing to do with it. You have this balance of masculine and feminine energy, and when those energies are in balance, you are your most productive, successful, kind of brightest light that you can sort of shine out there.
Right.
And this is one of the kind of the things about, I've titled this session The Masculine Rising, because when I talk to you, I feel like you have accepted, so I'm just going to turn my thing off, but you have accepted that you're, you've got your strength in vulnerability as well. That there is a side of you that actually is made stronger by the weaknesses that you allow yourself to face and you allow yourself to process. And I think one of the things that I often notice with my male clients is that, there's a lot of pushing down, there's a lot of repression.
Yeah, definitely.
Trying to be the strong guy and hold it all together, rather than just, like you say, kind of laying it all out and looking at yourself as a whole and being able to say, okay, so, I've got a great strength in here, but my weaknesses are here. And you've obviously gone through that yourself.
Yeah. And I've not always got it right. I'm not perfect. I'm someone that still, messes up, has bad days, finds myself in situations of my own making that I could have easily avoided if I'd just done things in a different way. But one of the things I try and do is I try and fess up. I try and say to myself, that, okay, I know I did this wrong.
Yeah.
And the reason I did this wrong was because of this, and I'll learn from it, and I'll try not to do it again in the future. We all have to go through that. We have to accept that we're not perfect. We all have to accept that things go wrong and that it's our own making, and sometimes not our own making in certain circumstances. But fundamentally, we're in charge of our choices. Right?
Yeah.
And we have to take full responsibility for our role in everything. And until we get to that point, until we're able to say, look, actually, being emotional, being authentic and being kind aren't weak.
No.
Right? So I deal with business people all the time, CEOs and that sort of thing. And when you say to them, look, when you're dealing with people, you have a choice. You can be right or you can be kind. When you choose the right option, you're telling that person, I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
But how's that going to work for you? How's that relationship going to build? How are you going to craft this business you want, building the relationships you need to build when you're saying to people, you're wrong, I'm right, right? It's my way, it's not your way. They're not going to go to war for you. They're not going to, dig in the trenches and fight your corner. They're just going to come and get the paycheck.
Yeah.
If you're kind, what you say to people is, you may be right. You may be right. What a wonderful phrase, 4-word phrase to say when anyone challenges you, when anyone tries to argue with you. If you just turn around and say, you may be right.
Yeah. It equals everything straight away, right?
Balance, as you say.
Yeah.
Balance, right? And you could say, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
It's not coming from a place of weakness. It's coming from a place of strength, because what you're saying is, I'm open to different ways. I'm sure you've heard about fixed mindset, growth mindset. Right?
Yeah.
So fixed mindset basically is where a lot of people are, where they are stuck living from ego, looking for external validation. And I liken it to the learning that one way, your way. It's my way. This is the way I've always done it. This is the way I'm always going to do it. No other way will work. Then you've got that growth mindset. That growth mindset knows a thing or two. It knows you're not this ego. It knows you don't have to compete with anyone. It knows that you can be calm, that you can be at peace, that you can be in balance. Right?
Yeah.
And it knows that there are ways, many, many ways. And they may not know the best way. And they're open to learning new ways.
Yeah. And
until people get into that mindset, until people say, okay, my way clearly isn't working because I'm in front of you, Paul. What's the other way? Okay. And it's just a realization, an awareness that actually there are many, many ways.
Yeah.
And being kind is actually saying, I'm comfortable enough as a man, as a human, to say I might be wrong.
Yeah.
Right? I might be wrong, but together, let's make it right.
Right. It's often a power
strength from there.
Kind of a power struggle though, because I think, especially like in positions of power or authority or whatever you want, like people, if you like a hierarchy along like the structure, like the work structure, for example, like you say, when you go to your manager, they're technically above you, and all that sort of thing. But like you say, you can choose at that stage when you're managing people to identify with them as people, or as just simply the person that does the job, like a worker. So it kind of tends to be like a bit of a power shift. I think also when the worker goes in there, they're expecting to be told or to be led sometimes, and that almost, again, impacts on the power, because then as the manager, as the CEO, you're kind of, you feel like you need to fill that hole, you need to fill those boots, if you like, and you kind of need to guide them and you need to show them, what it is that they need to do. And almost, although when you level the platform and you sort of say, okay, maybe you're right, let's talk about that a little bit more. Like, I'd like to hear more of your opinion. I'd like to offer you a little bit more of mine. It begins to kind of shift the balance a little bit. And sometimes that can be uncomfortable on both sides. I know I've had that when I've kind of gone into a meeting and I felt like I was the person managing, and I felt like I needed to kind of let this person know that it was okay. They were going through a personal issue at the time. It was like, it was going to be okay to take the time off, but that's not what they were expecting. And so ultimately they sort of challenged me on it. Like it became this kind of, well, hang on a minute. I came in here almost to argue my cause. Like I was expecting this kind of powerful person, this manager, this kind of person above me to kind of give me the grief and not doing the job. And when I was kind of open about it, it freaked them out. And they felt like, I don't know, again, my reading of it was just that they weren't ready for that. They were expecting something else. And so they were kind of then floundering and grabbing out, and it became a little bit aggressive because they felt challenged on some level. No.
You said a word there that actually sums it up in a nutshell: lead. Right? I think that we have so few leaders.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not talking about someone that's given the title of leader, like CEO or manager or anything like that. I think that people that can actually stand up and say, You know, I'm reminded actually of that Emerson quote, what you do speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you say.
Yeah.
So people that actually lead by example, the people that are not interested in saying to people, you do that because I'm above you and this is a hierarchical company and you're going to take and do that role. It's actually saying, look, let me show you what I require, what we need to do.
Yeah.
Right? And lead these people, lead, you know, your family, lead your company, lead your friends and colleagues and stuff like that, to be able to lead in such a way that people are buy in and are on board with what's going on. It's a real skill. And when you do that, when you come from that place, and you don't have to have a title, as Robin Sharma so famously says, you don't have to have a title to do that. Anyone can do it. Anyone can do it.
Yeah.
You know, and you just take care of your stuff. You just do it with an open heart and engage.
Yeah.
It's not difficult. It really isn't.
Yeah, yeah. So is that how your coaching's kind of manifest now, into the point where you're asking people to really take lead of their own lives, you know, like look at what it is that, you know, and guiding them through that and coaching them through that, enabling them to take control again?
Well, so what kind of happened with my coaching is I kind of have merged my two interests, right?
Yeah.
My big interests. One, science, specifically quantum physics.
Yeah.
And two, spirituality. Right.
Yeah.
So I've kind of pulled them together. So I coach people from the realm of peer-reviewed, hardcore science and spirituality, spiritual teachings, philosophy texts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And what I try and do is I try and show people exactly how to create what they want, what they desire, what they think is missing. But we start with them. Yeah. It's always about that person first of all, because you may have this grandiose idea for a company. You might have this world-changing invention you want to get out there. But is it in alignment with you?
Yeah.
Is it in alignment with your values?
Yeah.
Are you going to attract the right kind of people?
Yeah.
You know? So it always starts with that internal work first of all.
Yeah.
And then it goes from there. So that's kind of how I've kind of merged my coaching now. So I'll do a lot of science-backed stuff, talking about quantum physics, quantum field, intention, and such like. And I'll show people how to start to build lives that they want, things that they require, how to be aware, how to be observant, how to compress time properly. We're not doing stupid hacks where you can, you know, have something tomorrow like that, right? And how you can arrange it so that things start working in your life that make you smile.
Yeah.
That make you say, yeah, this is really, really good. This is exactly what I want.
Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant. And so you're dealing a lot with men, and that's with the women as well. You're doing the same.
It's majority with women. It's mostly with men. Mostly with men, but it does fluctuate. I don't specifically say I only train with men. You know, I only work with men. That's not the case. But you know, for whatever reason, I get a lot more men that are attracted my way. And in all honesty, they tend to be harder to work with than women. You know, women tend to come in and actually gravitate more towards the concepts, you know, like this is how this works, this is why this works, this is what you need to do, and they'll go away and do it. Men will, you know, they'll have their baggage around this kind of stuff. Some men don't like to talk too spiritually. Some, you know, when you start talking about the Tao Te Ching or Buddhism or something like that, you start to see them wince a little bit. So you have to be a little bit careful. I've also, you know, done some work in Riyadh with the Saudi royal family. So they're very conservative, ultra religious Muslims. You can't really go and start quoting the Bhagavad Gita in front of them and stuff like that. So it has to be a lot more kind of strict science-based stuff. So you're kind of meeting people where they are a lot of time, you know, and when you deal with lots and lots of clients over years and years and years, you get a feel for where people are and what they want to hear. But fundamentally, it's the same stuff. It doesn't matter where you talk about yin and yang, masculine and feminine, balance. You know, Lao Tzu talks about the Tao Te Ching, the Tao being this balance between the two, you know, pendulums of the two sides. If it's too much one way, it's not good. If it's too much the other way, it's not good.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
balance in the middle, that's Taoism, you know, and then you can talk more about leadership to some people. When you're talking about leadership, about having balance between how you lead people and how you let them lead. It's the same sort of thing. It's the same kind of end goal, but a different delivery vehicle, if you like.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the things that I love about coaching now. Like, you know, it almost feels like I've got the whole history of the world and all the cultures of the world to be able to draw on, to be able to demonstrate what it is that I'm asking my clients to engage with themselves. Things that I kind of love. And this is why I bring yoga into my coaching as well, because I feel like many of my clients are very disconnected from their bodies. You know, they very much live in their minds. And it feels like once they reconnect in with their bodies and begin to trust, sounds crazy, but when they begin to trust their physical selves more, they begin to trust their internal selves more as well. They're much more likely to listen to their heart because, you know, their hands have held them in handstands, you know, crazy things like that.
I think that's a really important thing you say. I think that it's really, really important for people to understand that this stuff only works when you align body and mind.
Yeah.
Right. There has been really, really good science done at the Hart Math University in California, I believe, where they've shown that if you try and utilize thoughts to alter things, for instance, I think the research actually was done with DNA strands. They tried to ravel and unravel DNA strands just by holding onto a test tube of them in deionized water. And what they did, they asked a group of people that were students at this university to just have the intention of raveling or unraveling this DNA strand, and nothing happened. They gave another group of people the same DNA strands and asked them to just show love to this test tube. Nothing happened. And then they asked a group of people to intend the unraveling or raveling of DNA and show love to it, and there was a 25% difference in all the DNA. Wow. So it showed clearly in peer-reviewed science, in a double-blind study, no, it wasn't a double-blind study, sorry, but peer-reviewed science, that with intention and thought, so with feelings, emotions, and thought all lined up, there was a difference in DNA.
Yeah.
Now that's quite crazy. That's quite spooky. Right? But that's quantum physics for you.
Yeah, I mean, but it's paralleled with biochemistry as well, because I'm going to see this guy, Dr. Bruce Lipton, who has become kind of me, because I'm all over his work.
Now, isn't he? He's over in October, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm going to see him.
Yes, I'll be there as well. So.
Oh, are you? Oh,
yeah.
I'll sit next to you. We can chat.
We love a bit of Bruce. Don't worry.
Oh, but he's brilliant, and that's where it all parallels as well.
Biology of belief, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. And it's the same thing. It's saying that the environment of each one of our cells, you know, is reactive, not just on the kind of the stuff that you put in. You are what you eat. Very true. It's a very, you know, very true in the sense that, you know, if you're putting crap into your body, then you're gonna hold on to that crap. Your body is not able to kind of process it all. Stuff's going to get lodged. You're going to get problems. You know, that's just the general kind of thought. But also that if you are holding on to emotions, if your thought patterns are negative the whole time, that as well is being held in with your body, is actually affecting the way your cellular biology works, which is fascinating to me.
It is fascinating. And you know, that you've I'm sure you've seen documented cases of people curing themselves of some really difficult diseases to cure through laughter.
Yeah.
You know, it's just crazy stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a whole laughter yoga thing going on. Like a kind of, again, it's like wave of laughter yoga, but it's also about, like, you know, and then when you look back at society and you look at how negatively people are thinking about themselves because of the pressure of, you know, of culture and the idea that we have to be something specific to be successful. You know, we talked earlier about how much anxiety has risen in young children and boys specifically, and that's just not in the Western world. You know, I think the levels of boys committing suicide in South Korea, for example, which is a culture that is very driven by looks and what you have, materialism. I mean,
and success through schooling and stuff like that, and the pressure they get put under.
In intrinsically linked to all of that as well. And the male suicide level for under 21s, I mean, imagine these babies, has just skyrocketed over like the last 10 years. It's gone from something like ridiculous, like 3%, up to something like 68% or something like that. And it's awful. It's crazy. And I kind of feel like, again, all these thoughts that we're having, all these negative patterns that we're absorbing, not just through our food and our drink. I think we've become more aware of actually what we're putting into our mouth is so vital. But we are just beginning to touch on how important it is to think positively about yourself and about looking at yourself with love and admiration, and really being at home inside and outside of within your.
And it kind of aligns with what we said earlier about sitting down and just being, right? The reason that most people can't sit down in silence and just be for a while is simply because they can't listen to the narrative that goes through their mind. That the way that they talk to themselves about themselves is so negative, and it's a way that we wouldn't allow anyone outside of ourselves to talk to us like. And yet we do it all day. I can't believe you did that. What an idiot. You're so ugly. No one's going to love you. I'm so fat. I'm useless. And it goes round and round and round and round. And we can't sit still. And we can't sit still and we can't be quiet, because as soon as we are, that switches on. So we're looking for a distraction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And until we go back and discover that actually that's not true. And actually we can override that narrative with a new narrative. Until we start doing that, then anything else you want is going to come at a cost, because it's being driven from this fixed mindset, from this ego side, from the side that's looking for external validation, because you don't want to go internally, because the voices inside are saying you're useless, you're no good, you're ugly, whatever. So you're trying to compensate for that narrative. And that's where all the problems come from. And it happens to guys as well as women. It's not just a women thing. Guys do it. And guys are a lot more fierce with themselves than women usually. They won't admit it.
Because I mean, I also see, I think a lot of the level of addictions now are an all-time high as well.
And addictions are just another mask. They're just another mask. People will addict themselves with drugs, with alcohol, with sex, with pornography, with anything that kind of diverts them away from having to sit down and focus on themselves, to listen to what's going on inside. It's not, they don't want to do it. They don't like who they are. It's as simple as that, really.
But we're also never encouraged to do that, are we?
No, of course not. Where are we? Look, I'm 49 years old. I can't remember being sat down by my parents and being told, have a sit down, think about who you are, this wonderful physical representation of the universe, having an experience of itself in time and space, in a location, and just think about how amazing and miraculous. And I'm not saying my mum and dad were in any way, they did their absolute best. But no one was encouraged to do that.
No.
I'm sure there's some kids
people
out
there. Even now that we know how important it is to kind of allow children to express themselves fully and naturally, rather than kind of, block them in, put them in holes and all that sort of thing. There's still so few people telling their children on a daily basis or even on a weekly basis that just as they are is just perfect. And right now, this is exactly where they need to be. And I mean, this is, I teach children's yoga, and this is one of the things that I give every single class to my kids, out of just literally because I've gone down this journey myself, and I've done all the work, and I've looked back, and I've realized how many of the negative thought patterns that I've had to remove for myself have come from being a kid. And again, I mean, I feel like the pressure is almost higher on boys even in that sense, because my husband reflected back to me the other day, I've gone through all of my life knowing that I have to get a job that I can keep working, because even if my wife works, at some point she's going to have to stop, and it's all going to be on me if I want a family. So I have to have a career or a job or something that's going to be able to pave my own way as a single man, that's going to be able to kind of pave my way through my initial married life, supporting my wife and building us a home and all that sort of thing. But then when she stops work, if she is, we're in that generation where most women have worked, then when she stops working, then it's all on me for the foreseeable. Now I need to be in some kind of a career where I can maintain that throughout. And so for him, like his biggest pressure was finding something at 16, which, you know, again, I kind of look back now and I think of the person that I am, 25 years later, and I think to myself, my God, imagine asking children, literally children, to make a decision like that for their entire lives. You know,
well, you would never go and ask for career advice of a 16-year-old. You're expected to do it yourself, right?
Right? Yeah, exactly. And yet,
no, I agree with that.
We're kind of at school. That's the way our schooling system works as well. You know, with all the pressure of exams and everything like that. And then again, at the end of school, you're expected to get a job. From a guy's perspective, and this is why, you know, another reason, like I said, Paul, I'm interested to speak to you because I feel for the boys. And my eldest is my eldest is my son, and he's just going to be starting taking his GCSE options next year. Makes them this year, and he begins to take them next year. Wow. And already the pressure's on.
Yeah.
You know, already not just him, for all of his friends. And he's a good kid. You know, that there are a lot of other kids in his year group who I think, from what he's told me, are really struggling to find where it is that they're going to fit in. And as the walls are beginning to close in, you know, they're all beginning to go, you know, I just want to be a rapper. You know, like you said earlier, I just want to be an actor. I just want to be a famous footballer. Why can't I do that? Why have I got to do all these things that don't mean anything to me?
You know, I find it all fascinating. I did see a report somewhere that said something over 50% of the adult population that are working in America don't like their job.
Yeah.
Right? You know, so, you know what, America, 330 million people. Yeah. Probably 200 million people working, 100 million people not happy with their job.
Yeah.
I mean, just staggering. So they are going to work upset about, not happy, let's say, with what they've got to do for the next 8 to 10 hours. Every single day of their working life.
Yeah.
And it's no wonder they're looking for stimulation elsewhere. It's no wonder that they're, you know, you can almost say, I get it, right? I understand why this is happening. Yeah. I understand why you're looking for some sort of validation or some sort of stimulation outside of this, because you're so upset, almost depressed about what you've got to do to get through the day, to just pay the bills.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I agree. And I think you're right. I think actually it's touching on the depression side of it as well. That's what you end up with. You end up being, I mean, there's all levels of depression, right? You know, and but I think baseline, certainly those 100,000 people in America are in depression. They, whether they will recognize it or not, whether they're kind of functioning depressives, I'm calling people now, because if you can be a functioning alcoholic or a functioning drug addict, you can definitely be a functioning depressive.
Yeah, for sure.
Where like you say, going through the same routine every day, wondering what the point of life is, wondering why you're even here, wondering if you just weren't here one day, whether or not anything would be.
Yeah. And you know what? What happens is you become disassociated, right? So you go through this stage where you're not enjoying what you're doing every day. So you get to, your ability to be the person who you want to be is lost.
Yeah.
Right? So what tends to happen is that you stop communicating in certain ways to your loved ones. Yeah. You know, you don't want to go out and play with the kids. You don't want to go on a date night with your partner or your wife. You don't want to go and see your relatives. You don't want to go out for a meal with your friends. You start to just dip.
Yeah.
And once that dip happens, it's only going one way. Right?
Absolutely.
And then all these other issues pile on top of what actually is just the mentality that I don't want to do this fucking job.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like what I'm doing. Absolutely. I want to do something else. That's not my passion. That's not my bliss.
Yeah.
Why can't I do this? This is what I want. This is who I am.
Yeah.
And this is a huge, as we say, you know, we've alluded to it. It's a huge problem going on around the world at the moment in all sorts of ways, that people are lost. People have lost their identity. People don't know the way it really works or really is or really could be, however you want to phrase it. You know, people can truly change their lives on a dime, right? They really can, starting today, make a decision about actually what is it that I really want? What
Yeah.
lights me up? What fires me up? What's going to get me out of bed in the morning and say, yes, let's do this? Because if you can find that, you can start creating that.
Yeah.
And if you can start creating that, you've got something to get up for. You've got something to look forward to. It doesn't matter if you do it an hour a night after you get home from your job. You can start. It's the best time to be a human in the history of humanity.
Yeah.
The very best time. I think the odds on being born now, with the level of security, safety, medication, technology that we have available to us, is something like 400 trillion to 1.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
So it's a good time to be here.
Yeah.
You can truly do anything because you have the communicative capabilities. I don't even know if that's a word, but I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, I think
You have the capabilities to shrink the world, communicate with anyone, to sell anywhere in the world. I mean, think about 20 years ago. If you had a company that had disability, you would have been like, oh, thank you. And now you've got it in a smartphone.
Yeah, you've literally got the world at your fingertips.
Literally.
Yeah.
And all people need is a little bit of, they need to be listened to. They need to be understood. And they need to be told that, yes, it's okay to feel like that. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. But you're just not following your bliss. You're just not following your passion. And if you can't find your passion, just go and spend some time in nature.
Yeah.
Just go and open your eyes, sit down and look at the petals of a flower and find the magic in that and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's crazy because I feel like it's lovely to hear this coming from a guy, you know, like I say, a lot of my clients are women and they get it. A lot of the guys that I've worked with, I've had the same experience that you touched on briefly, where they'll shut down very quickly because I feel like when I kind of explain this and sort of give them this opportunity to be vulnerable, whether it's because they're in front of a woman or whether it's just because they're uncomfortable going to that place on their own, they need to go to it on their own, and they need to come back when they've toed and froed, and then gone there for a little bit, and then come away, and then gone there for a little bit. That kind of exploration of who am I, and what is it that I really need to kind of to birth in this world as well. What is it that I'm special for? What is it that is that is unique about me? Because I'll go in there and I'll say, listen, we're 37.7 million people on this planet. You need to understand that there are, every single one of us is so unique. That figure was wrong, but every single one of us is
I think it's about 7.8 billion, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking about cells in the human body. I'm back to blooming Bruce Lipton. He's in there. He's in my mind.
You need to deal with that first.
Perspective, we're all completely different, and I have twins that I teach, 3 sets of twins, 2 identical. They look exactly the same. They react to everything so differently. It's crazy, and it's fascinating to me. And twins has always been a thing that's kind of come through my life. I've had my best friends have been twins since I was like year dot, and they keep coming into my life, which is just kind of a lovely little part about my existence that I'm really enjoying as well, because they fascinate me. And even then, it's Siamese twins, even those people that physically will move almost as one, there's 2 independent people who will almost move physically as one. Their thought processes are very, very different, and they can finish each other's sentences because they're so interlinked and they're so entwined in their own beings, or the being of that other person. They've grown up with them, they know them so well, and yet they'll begin to surprise one another when I kind of when you talk about something with them and you ask them like a deep question, and they'll be looking at one another like, whoa, this isn't something that we always discuss. This is going to come from you. Going to come from, I'm going to express myself here. And that's, again, that for me is fascinating. And it just shows that it doesn't matter how alike we all believe we are, we're completely unique in so many other ways. And it's that uniqueness, it's that light that we really need to shine out there.
And I think also it does tend to make you wonder about this competition thing, right? Because how can we compete with anyone when no one sees the world through our lenses?
Yeah.
How really can we do it? Because although we're obviously the same species, we're pretty individual. and we are lit up by different things. We have different values at times. We like different things. There's no competition. That, you know, I say to my clients, the only person you're in competition with is yourself, and all you need to do is just try and be 1% better tomorrow. If you can be 1% better tomorrow, if you can do something with 1% better focus, if you can do something with 1% better attention, or 1% faster, or 1% more efficiently, or 1% cheaper, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you can do that every day for a month. You've improved that skill or that task by 30%.
Yeah. Yeah.
You do that every month. You're talking 1%. It's not a huge amount.
No. Yeah. And it feels achievable when you break it down. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about coaching, isn't it? Is making it feel achievable for people.
Absolutely.
Them see and begin to realize, and then giving them the okay to go ahead and try every day, you know.
Absolutely. And you know, the one thing that's been a consistent theme throughout my coaching from day one to now is that I have tried every step of the way to make it more simple. Right? I can sit here and give you 20 minutes on quantum theory like that. And you'll sit there and you'll go, I haven't understand a word you said. But it will all be relevant stuff.
Yeah.
Or I can say to you something nice and simple in one sentence. You can go, I've got that. And it will be the same thing.
Yeah.
What's going to get the client to do the work? Because let's be honest, we spoke about mind-body. And mind-body is really, really important. You know, your mind sends out an electrical signal into the quantum field of intention where all possibilities exist at the same time. Right?
Yeah.
Your feelings magnetize one potential reality back to you.
Yeah.
So that's why your thoughts and your feelings have to align, your mind and body, right? However, it won't work unless you take some action.
Yeah.
You can't sit down and wait for it to happen and just meditate it into reality. It doesn't
becomes
work
a possibility, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
actually do it.
You need to decide exactly what it is you want. You need to understand that your entire thought about it needs to be in that thing. So let's use wealth as an example. If you want to think wealth, but you feel poor, there's a disconnect. You have to think wealth. You have to feel wealth. You have to act wealth.
Well, yeah, for sure.
So all that has to align, and that becomes your daily task. What can I do today that's 1% better than yesterday to help bring or sustain wealth into my life, or fitness, or relationships, or business,
whatever,
or happiness, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's how you do it. And you build from there. And what you say to people is, right, how are we going to do this? Yeah. This is where we want to go.
Yeah.
This is how we've got to feel. You want to do a gratitude journal? Perfect. I love them. But don't do the gratitude journal for the things you've got in your life now.
Yeah.
Do the gratitude journal for the things you want in your life.
Yeah.
Because what that does, that shifts the focus to this quantum field of intention and this probability or possibility that exists now.
Yeah.
To bring it into your life. And that's what you do. And then you take action every step of the way. There's a gap. You're here. This is where you want to be. There's that gap.
Yeah.
You take action to fill that gap. And if you do that, it has to come into existence. It can't not.
Yeah.
It just can't.
No, you just manifest it. And that's the crazy part of it as well. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts as well, is when people come back to you, and I'm knowing you will have experienced this as well, but certainly for me with my first couple of clients as well, it's just that feeling when they come back to you and they say, oh, I've done it. Like they couldn't quite believe it actually worked. You know, you've gone through it, you've explained it, you've told them how they're going to achieve it, you've set out together, you've set out exactly where it is. Like you say, this is where you are, that's where you want to be. These are all the little ways that you're going to get there so that it feels like you can manage it, because just take one giant leap is too much. And that,
but also don't worry about how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You don't need to know that. You just need to focus on where you're at in this present moment.
Yeah.
You've made that intention. You're holding that thought. You're holding that feeling. They're aligned. Just do the work.
Yeah.
It takes care of itself.
Yeah.
It's how universes are created. It's how galaxies are formed. It's how flowers open and flower and smell.
Yeah.
It's how bees know where to go.
Yeah.
You know, it's how
Yeah.
salmon know how to return to their spawning ground. It's how your heart keeps beating. It's intrinsically part of your being. And
Yeah.
if you allow it to flow unimpeded by getting out of the way,
Yeah.
stopping the nonsense that's going around in your mind,
Yeah.
feeling love for everything and everyone,
Yeah. That's when the magic happens.
that's when the magic happens, baby.
That's when miracles begin to become reality, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. When, you know, when you say it like that, you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, these are like miracles. Universe is being created, you know, like flowers opening. To us, they are miracles, you know, but like you say, basically they just start with intention. You know, they start with intention to want to be and to want to exist. And the want for that comes from love. Just comes
there's
from
a huge amount of research going on at the moment about intention.
Yeah.
And they're actually looking now apparently at the theory of evolution, Darwin's theory of evolution, where Darwin said that it was survival of the fittest, that
Yeah.
you know, there would be an environmental stress and the fittest animals that could adapt to that stress would survive. Well, now they're looking at it and saying actually there was other research done at the time that said evolution happens through intention. That a giraffe with a short neck looks at a tree and goes, I want to eat those leaves up that tree. I need a longer neck. I'm going to inherit the neck. And then the intention, and I believe Bruce Lipton has spoken about this as well, that actually evolution is driven by intention.
Yeah.
That the giraffe intends a long neck. That the salmon intends to return to the exact same spawning ground that it was spawned at, even though it may have travelled thousands of miles away over its lifetime.
Yeah.
How on earth does it come back?
Yeah.
You know, my dad used to race pigeons.
Yeah.
And he used to take them all over the country. And I used to sit and watch these birds come back.
Yeah.
How do they know?
Yeah.
How do they know where to come?
Yeah.
They could have gone anywhere. They could
Yeah.
have seen in a tree in Lincolnshire eating seeds. They're back.
Yeah.
It's just
And they
crazy.
chose to return to South London.
Yeah.
Why?
Why did you come back here, this concrete jungle? You could have been anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy. And like I say, those are things that, you know, have inspired men to wonder about greater realities. You know, those sorts of things, those miracles, if you like, that you can create every day in your life by simply setting your intention. And I think this is the magic that I really want to kind of, I don't know, like almost foghorn out to the whole world. You know, it feels like you say, there aren't enough people out there who are inspiring people to say what it is they feel, to lead from their heart, to create these miracles. You know, there just aren't enough people out there anymore. And it's like whether or not that is changing, I kind of feel like it is. I see people like Will Smith, who I find quite an inspiring male figure. So I like listening to him. I mean,
Jim Carrey is another one who's into this.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to love like Wayne Dyer and Louise Hay and all those people who made it just, again, like you say, just strip it back to make it so simple.
There are people out there that I think we're getting close to a tipping point here. Yeah. I think there are many, you know, I know a lot of people that do this kind of stuff, and I see a lot more people come through and a lot more books come out and a lot more programs, et cetera, et cetera. You know, when you go and watch someone like, you know, whether you like him or not, when you go and watch someone like Deepak Chopra, you'd go and watch him years ago and you'd get like 200 people in a room. You go and watch him now, you get like 5,000 people in the room.
Absolutely.
So there is an absolute thirst for this kind of thing. And you can find it any way you want. You can take on board this information in any way you want. So you can go and watch a Deepak Chopra or a Sadhguru and you can have the more spiritual aspect of it. Or you can look throughout history at where this is happening. I'll give you an example. You know, before 1903, we didn't have powered, consistent, heavier than air flight, right? It didn't exist. It wasn't possible. Okay. Does that mean that the ability to fly wasn't here? No, of course it doesn't. The ability to fly an aircraft has always been here. It's always been in that field of intention, that quantum field, because all possibilities exist, right? Orville and Wilbur Wright knew this at some level.
Yeah.
They thought that they could create this aircraft.
Yeah.
They felt emotion, feeling it could be done.
Yeah.
They weren't thinking flight and feeling staying on the ground.
Yeah.
They had aligned with flight.
Yeah.
They were then every single day taking experiments, building engines, designing wings, building, I believe they even built a rudimentary wind tunnel, right, to try and work out how to fly.
Physical
right?
action.
Okay, lining it all up. One day, I think it was something like the 17th of December in 1903, near Kitty Hawk in North Carolina, they had the first heavier-than-air powered sustained flight, right?
Yeah.
And the world was never the same again.
Yeah.
You can find these examples everywhere.
Yeah, sure.
Everywhere, right? Now, they probably didn't know about quantum physics, and perhaps they quite clearly didn't know about quantum physics because it only started to become a thing in 1900 when Max Planck started looking at the quanta, as he called it, right? So they wouldn't have even known about it. But they would have known that they thought they could do it. They believed they could do it. They were taking action to do it. Their desire to do it was there, and they weren't going to allow failures, and there were lots of them, to stop them.
Yeah.
They were just going to do it.
Yeah.
And two bicycle mechanics from Ohio were the ones that designed the first ever powered flight.
And changed the world. And changed the world.
And go down in history.
Yeah.
And never be forgotten.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
Changed the course of that. And, you know, that was in 1903. Yeah. 66 years later, we put a man on the moon.
Yeah. Yeah.
40 years after that, we put a probe on a meteor.
Yeah.
1 billion miles out in space.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. Crazy, isn't it?
So don't tell me that real magic doesn't happen, because I will not have it.
Yeah.
And I will sit you down in front of my computer screen and we will find magic all over the place. All right?
Okay. I believe you.
And then what we'll do is we'll create your magic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just the same as the Wright brothers did.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. The same process.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. It's getting people to believe that they can be those Wright brothers, right?
And why not? The Wright brothers were bicycle mechanics. Who were they to build an aircraft? Who were they to change the world? You know, who was Martin Luther King?
Yeah, someone with a vision.
Who was Gandhi? Gandhi was a lawyer. You know, he decided after being thrown off a train because it was too dark to be on it that he was going to do something about it.
Yeah.
And he freed India from, you know, bondage of an empire.
Yeah.
Without firing a bullet, I hasten to add.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What an inspiration.
You know, these people, you don't need a title to be a leader. You don't need to do anything other than be yourself, believe in what you believe in, and saying, you know what, no matter what, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do. Yeah. And I'm going to make sure that I do it from my heart, with love, with passion, and in just try and get everyone involved and everyone on board.
Yeah. And
you might only have a niche of 100 people that follow you into it, but what fun you're going to have.
Yeah.
You know, if those 100 people give you £1,000 a year for your niche, that's £100,000 a year income where you can just give them the best service ever.
Yeah.
You know, how difficult do you want to make this?
Yeah. Yeah.
We can make it as hard or as easy as you want. We really can.
Well, that's the beauty about stripping it back to be simple as well, is that you actually strip back a lot of the fear. Because, you know, again, going into that idea of, okay, you know, to be able to make 100,000 a year, for example, you need to be pitching out to 1 million people, because the kind of the sales dynamic is 10% of what you put out, you know, you're going to get back. But in actual fact, that's not true. If you're focused.
But who tells you that? Who says that?
Yeah.
Who makes that up?
Yeah.
You know, it's someone saying that this is the way it should be. So that's what happens.
Yeah.
Because that's what you believe.
Those sorts of comments that have compounded the idea that we can't achieve what we set our dreams on, isn't it?
I love going into, I love smashing paradigms. I love it. I love sitting in front of people and let them tell me how it's going to be, right? And then I just say to them, no, it ain't going to be like that at all. Yeah. Let's start again.
Yeah. So where do you see yourself going now then, Paul? Where do you see, like, you know, where is Paul Webb developing? Hands in head.
I just want, you know, this is my passion. what we've done the last 5 or 10 minutes, we're engaged, we're bright, we're smiling, we're changing the world, right? But it might be that in order to do that, we just need to affect one person.
Yeah.
Right? And all Paul Webb wants to do is, when Paul Webb is in front of one person, he wants them to go away feeling better about themselves than they did when they met Paul Webb. That's it. Simple as that.
And what about your own personal journey? Where do you see that going? What, like, can I be personal and kind of ask what, you know, where you'll be seeing yourself being personally, like in terms of personal achievement, things like personal goals that you want to explore, that sort of thing? Where do you think you'll be going over the next, say, 5 years? It's a bit of a random one, but just...
I will be...
where's your dream?
I will be traveling with very special people who I care for deeply. I will be experiencing loads of different things, meeting loads of different people, showing my kids a different way of being and expressing themselves, where they're not afraid to be who they truly are, and having a bloody good time while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Simple. I'm so simple, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I love the travels involved in that though as well, because I kind of, it's one of the things that I feel has really enriched my life immeasurably. You know,
I've done so few of it in the last few years. You know, and I love travel, and you know, I've got some plans that should make that right.
Yeah. So. But I think it's also, you see, I think, because again, going back to detachment, I think it's important to detach yourself from your culture, throw yourself out into your world, and utilize all the skills that have kind of been buried down there in terms of how you can use those sort of things.
I'll tell you something really funny about that, actually. The most surreal experience to happen to me this year was sitting in a royal palace with a prince, the House of Sword, watching Rogue One, a Star Wars story, on a huge screen, and explaining to this prince the history of Darth Vader and what motivates him as a Sith Lord. And as I was doing it, I was thinking to myself, no one's going to believe this is happening to me.
I love it.
Crazy stuff like that. It's just, it just makes it all worthwhile. Right?
Yeah, life's an incredible thing, right? Let the opportunities in, and you just do nothing but reap the rewards. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wish you the best of luck, Paul. It's been an absolute joy chatting to you, and I really hope I get to sit next to you near Bruce.
Yeah, bring on Bruce. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I'll definitely be looking out for you. I'll be the short one, you be the tall one.
I'll be the tall big one, yeah, where everyone looks at me and goes, oh, you're bigger than I thought.
Well, thank you so much for being my guest. Like I said, absolute pleasure. And well, let's just wrap that up for the night, I think. But if you would like any more information on what Paul's talking about and you'd like to contact him directly, the link for his website is below, but just in case, it's www.paulwebbcoaching.com. Again, you can contact me through www.thishappyguru.com. I really hope you've enjoyed tonight as much as I have. Thank you all for tuning in so much. Love and light, peace and love. Good night, everybody.
Humanity has been on an epic journey of discovery, learning the truth about the world we live in. New discoveries about the true origins of humanity, ancient history, free energy, as well as the systematic corruption of world governments are now on the forefront of our daily reality. Is the world headed towards destruction based on control and power? Or is an opportunity now being presented to shift and uplift into a higher consciousness? My name is Mel V, co-founder and creative director of Conscious Consumer Network, an independent broadcast network that was launched on the 1st of January 2015. In the last 3 years, Conscious Consumer Network has broadcast over 2,800 shows in multiple languages, featuring guests from across the world, whilst creating media that is aimed at the creation of a free, fair, peaceful, just, sustainable world. Conscious Consumer Network provides full training and an interactive support network for all broadcasters, and we are always looking for inspiring and educational content.
Hi, this is Lainey Liberty.
And this is Miro Siegel.
In 2018, Conscious Consumer Network has expanded to multiple broadcast locations, increasing our availability and reach across the world, remaining on the cutting edge of independent media. If we wish to create a better world, we must first create better media, geared towards real education instead of indoctrination.
You guys really are what changing the world is going to be about. It's educating kids at a grassroots level.
Having become a pillar of stability in the turbulent world of independent media, we have even more going on in 2018. Conscious Consumer Network is a publicly funded network, and we rely on all of you to keep us on the air. Show your support for independent media by donating to our 2018 Network Support Fund. Dare to seek a better world. Support independent media.